all of the focus is putting on men, while women are the fastest growing segment of the criminal justice system. And so I wanted to put women into the conversation, and I wanted to give an example of who the women are that we incarcerate.
Welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Kate Bryan, and I am so honored to be sharing this special series about incarceration and women with you. Through One Girl Revolution, I have embarked on a journey to learn more about incarceration, the justice system, and women, who are the fastest growing population within jail and prison. And through this journey, my eyes have been opened and continue to be opened every single day. If you haven't watched our short documentary, The Girl Inside, on YouTube yet, that is a great place to start. Please watch and share it. The world needs to hear these women's voices and their stories. Before we get into this week's episode, please subscribe to the One Girl Revolution podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at One Girl Revolution, and you can find all of our social media links, podcast episodes, videos, and so much more on our website at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com. This week's episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast features Susan Burton, founder of A New Way of Life. Susan herself was incarcerated 6 times throughout her life, and after finally entering treatment on October 4th, 1997, Susan began to turn her life around. Susan saved up money from her job as a carer, and in 1998, she opened a 3-bedroom safe home in South LA. Susan began meeting women at a Los Angeles bus station as they returned from prison and welcomed them into her home, urging them to stay as long as necessary to put their lives back together, and that was the beginning of A New Way of Life. A New Way of Life's mission is to advance multidimensional solutions to the effects of incarceration. They provide housing and support for formerly incarcerated women and work to help them with a successful community reentry, family reunification, and individual healing. They work to restore the civil rights of formerly incarcerated people, and they empower, organize, and mobilize formerly incarcerated people as advocates for social change and personal transformation. Since 1998, more than 1,000 women and children have been helped through A New Way of Life. More than 300 women have been reunited with their children. It's absolutely incredible what A New Way of Life is doing. And they provide these services at less than a third of the cost of incarceration. Susan's story is a powerful one, and I'm thrilled to have her on the podcast to share her story and to talk about the transformative work she's doing through A New Way of Life. So without further ado, here's Susan. Susan, welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for this podcast and the work that you're doing.
I'm so grateful and honored to have you on the podcast to share your story and about the incredible work that you're doing. As we talked before we started recording, you know, my life has definitely changed since I spent some time in Cook County Jail and got to know some of the women and their stories. And One Girl Revolution released this documentary, and I know you have your own documentary, so I want to talk about that because that's really, I think, how I first heard about your stories. I stumbled upon a documentary about your life and your work. But before we get into that, before we get into your own story and all the work that you do, I'd love to ask you, who is a One Girl Revolution in your own life? Who is a woman or girl that's inspired you?
I think I want to say my mom. And it wasn't until later in my years that I began to realize how courageous she was in her own life, and much of what she had to deal with that didn't allow her efforts to rise as they could have and should have. But she was just courageous as a young girl deep in the South in Texas. She took off to go to Howard University. And I can only imagine what courage it took for her to do that in the 1930s, 1940s to leave your home of Texas, a really oppressive community, to reach for something better in her life.
She paved the way definitely for you and for so many women. Looking back on the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, you think about all the different women that did things exactly like your mother did, where they took such a chance, followed their spark in a way and
Yes,
paved the path for all of us. That's incredible.
yes. There's been other women along the way, um, um, some in academia, Michelle Alexander. Um, um, I love the writings of some of the poets, and so there's been many.
Yeah. And I'm sure the women that you're working with every single day to inspire you. I'm sure you could just like write a whole book of all the women that have inspired you.
Yes, yes.
Susan, before we get into the great work that you're doing, I want to talk about your own story. So I would love to rewind to your early life, who you are, where you're from, and just a little bit about your own life journey and what led you to where you are today.
I was born in Los Angeles. My parents migrated from the South. First, my mother to D.C., where she met my father, who was in the Army, and they came to Los Angeles, and I was born here, and was born into a community of struggle and hardship.
And you suffered abuse as a child. You went through a lot of different things in your own life as a young person.
Yes, yes. Uh, my mother and father, when they migrated here, they were sort of directed into a housing project. The housing project was called Aliso Village. And my father worked and my mother worked. And, um, we were just exposed to a lot of harm and hardship. Not just me, but my brothers too. So I have five brothers and I'm the only girl. And it was tough. I had to be a tough girl, and I had to learn to manage different types of abuse
Mm.
as a young girl. After coming through so much difficulty, so much trauma, so much abuse as a child, I sort of learned to manage it. But then my son, he was 5 years old. His name was KK, and he was a rambunctious, active little boy. And he was accidentally killed by an LAPD detective. He was
Mm.
outside playing and he was ran over. And at that point, I just couldn't hold anymore pain. And I began to drink, and I drank to drown the pain. I drank to drown the grief, and it escalated to drug use. And at that point, I was incarcerated for the drug use. It
Mm.
was the height of the war on drugs. And what we know, the war on drugs was a war on people, a war on communities, both nationally and internationally. And I was incarcerated, and there could have been, and there should have been some other types of resources available. It should have been offered by the state. I should have been supported by the department to get help. I'm sure the officer got help, but I didn't get any help.
Mm.
So I drank, and that has, devastating consequences when you turn alcoholic and the pain doesn't go away. And the problems that alcohol and addiction brings into your life can be just, another level of devastation.
Mm.
So, in a month or so, I will celebrate 25 years of sobriety.
Oh,
But
congratulations. It's amazing.
yeah, thank you. But it was difficult, very, very difficult to um, get through that and get here where I am today. So,
It's also interesting too, Susan, that when you're incarcerated for something like that, there aren't resources. As far as I know, it's not like you're going to rehab where people are working you through different issues or working through the trauma and digging down to like, let's treat the cause instead of the effect, right? Like, let's
yeah,
not just put you in jail or prison because of those things, but let's actually help you get back on track and
yeah,
get in recovery. And there are so many issues even today, and I know you're like many of the women that you're working with, you're seeing this every single day where the same thing is happening and nobody's changing this.
right, right. So, my grief, I will say, was criminalized, and that's horrible.
Mm.
It's horrible what we do in this country. My grief was punished. And there were so many other women just like me that was traveling in and out of incarceration, sort of like in a revolving door.
Mhm.
And, we spend billions, trillions in this country um, on punishment and incarceration, where we could be doing restoration, rehabilitation, supporting people to address their issues, their harms, stopping harm. But it's almost as if this nation is itself addicted to punishment,
Mm.
addicted to incarceration. And, I don't know what it's going to take, but I believe that we as a society is becoming more woke about um, other ways of dealing with social ills.
Mm-hmm. And just talking about the issues too, and actually like becoming educated. And I think there are so many people, and especially when you think about incarceration, and I've seen this firsthand through the work that I've done with Cook County Jail and some of the other things that One Girl Revolution has done. People just don't know. We put people in jail and prison and don't think about them. It's like, the most forgotten about population, or one of the most forgotten about populations. And women are the fastest growing population within jail and prison, and you know that better than anyone, and no one's actually dealing with these issues. And like yourself, I know you were incarcerated 6 times, and it becomes this cycle because we're not actually creating anything that's changing it. It's just this never ending cycle.
Yes, yes, agreed.
For people that are listening, Susan, since I have you, I want to ask you, what was that experience like the first day when you were incarcerated for the first time, the first day that you ended up in jail? What was that like? Because I think there are so many people that have these ideas. They watch, Orange is the New Black, or they watch these TV shows and they think they know what it's like. But what was that experience like for you, if you don't mind sharing?
It's almost, when I think about it, sort of surreal. You're transported back into a time that it was very similar to uh, um, being handled as a commodity, being handled as a slave. You're took into a foreign place, and you're stripped of all of your identity, all of your choices, all of your individuality, and all of your hopes, all of your dreams. And you're stripped, and your body's examined, and you're giving, foreign, articles to wear in your clothing. You're given a number, and you're placed in a dorm. And the dorms, the way they are, it's kind of similar to the way people were packed into slave ships, and you're put to work, and you're shuffled through a court system that is also foreign. And you're wondering, oh my God, how did I get here? and you have no control, none whatsoever. Um, it's quite um, an alarming and um, uh, kind of like a place where hopelessness sets in. Um, um, yeah, that's how I describe it.
And I imagine getting out, because different times you were getting out. And I want to ask you about the last time that you got out, but getting out, it's kind of a similar experience. You're like, most women that I've talked to, they don't have any money. They, have a bag of whatever items they had when they were in jail or prison, and then they're left with nothing. They have no job opportunities, no housing a lot of the times. A lot of the times they've lost connection with their family or community. And so it's so easy. You can see how easy it is for people to end back up in the system.
Yeah, so being released after the torment and torture of being incarcerated, there's this blend of emotions, like you're happy that you're getting free, but you're unprepared to succeed, and you're trying to almost white knuckle it through to some sort of a reestablishment of your life, but you have no tools to do that with. And you're a grown woman and you're saying, I should be able to do this. And you're taking responsibility for all of it right on your shoulders. And, I miserably failed over and over again. And as I look at it now, um, it was a setup to fail. And it's our society's blind spot that this happens, that we put so many resources into the captivity, the exploitation of people's labor, the punishment, the harm, uh, harming people while incarcerated until instead of rehabilitating them. We put so many resources into that and none on the back end. And that was one of the reasons that I wanted to start a new way of life and create a place that women would have a choice, safety, security, a place to heal and become a better part of our community after incarceration.
And there's honestly no better person than you, Susan, because you know the system, you know what these women are experiencing, and you're able to actually, be there for them and understand what they're going through, and figure out ways to support them and help them, especially, being incarcerated yourself 6 times. So what was the spark? I'm always curious what the spark was when you were like, I need to start a new way of life. How did that happen? What was the spark or the life-changing moment that led you to that? And then how did you end up starting your incredible organization?
Yeah, so I came to a place that I faced and began to investigate all of the things that had happened that had led up to the day of October 4th of 1997. And I realized that if I was going to, I realized I needed help. And I found some help. And I found the help out in a upscale community, upper middle class community in Santa Monica. And I began to understand the despairing differences between my community of South LA and what Santa Monica had to offer. I began to heal, and I began to wonder why these services weren't offered to me before. And I began to look at the role of race and class, and I, I just was startled. This was all I needed, was a place to recover, therapy, different types of social services to make my life better. And I remembered so many women just like me that also needed just what I needed, and figured if I could recreate the services that I received in Santa Monica, perhaps I could help other women not recidivate. Kate, what I knew is that I could not take back the years of suffering and all the pain that I had endured. I could not take that back. I could not change the past. But what I could do was to offer a way out for other women once I found my way out, and they would not have to endure years and years of suffering and cycling in and out of incarceration. So I got a small house, and I began to invite women into that house, and there a new way of life reentry project was created. Um, I could not bring KK back, but I could help other women to get their children back. And we began to expand our services to include women and their children. And so to date, I believe it's over 1,300 women have been through our doors at a new way of life, and over 400 children have been reunited with their moms.
Wow.
So it's sort of like a sweet retribution, a sweet payoff for all of the pain and suffering and loss that I experienced.
If you're enjoying this episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast, you can see more about the lives, struggles, hopes, and dreams of incarcerated women in One Girl Revolution's The Girl Inside on YouTube. The Girl Inside is a short documentary. It's only 10 minutes, so not a huge commitment, that features the stories and voices of 5 incarcerated women at Cook County Jail and an academic storytelling class that changed their lives. The link is in the show notes. Please watch and share The Girl Inside today. And now back to the show. Stories like yours, Susan, are so important for us to think about, because I feel like everybody goes through difficult chapters in their lives, and we can either choose to become the victim or we can become the victor. And when we become the victor, we're able to raise others up around us and empower others through our own story. Because when we speak, like when you share your story, and that's what I've seen so much through everything that you're doing and your willingness to just be open and share your own heart and your own journey, it empowers other people to share their stories. And whether it's a trauma that they're going through, or addiction, or incarceration, all these different things that people are going through in our world, you're empowering so many people. And I can only imagine those 1,300 that have come through your doors, the power that they're having to not only step forward and share their stories and change the trajectory of their own lives, but then their children's lives. They're empowering others around them and inspiring others around them. So it truly is an army that you're raising up, Susan.
Yeah. And so, the women that I work with, they really take to heart that when they get here, they're feeling so burdened with the fact that they failed. They feel like they failed, and we have to take time to educate and re-educate them about some of the outside factors that influence the choices and the positions that they were put in. And I think that's really, really important. And the role that class and race has played in where they have ended up. Not that they're like not accountable, but there are other factors that um, uh, allow for some to be prosecuted and others not. So, for instance, like the war on drugs criminalized a lot of people, especially Black people across the nation. And now with an opioid crisis, we're looking for medical support for people, but it's a different demographic of people, not all, but most. And so, kind of educating people about that and supporting them to understand that there are other factors that went into the position and the conviction that they were given.
What is a new way of life for people that are listening? And tell me about all the different aspects of what you do for the women that you work with.
Yeah, so a new way of life consists of 10 homes across LA County, and we provide women with housing, a good, healthy food. Um, uh, we have a job placement and job readiness services. We have legal services from post-conviction relief to um, family reunification services. So we have about 6 lawyers on staff here. We have leadership development courses. We have some entrepreneurial services. And we engage in therapy is offered to the women, and an analysis, a broader analysis, financial literacy, people, the women participate in, and we're now putting up gardens to grow food, and I love to see the children out there playing in the garden. And so it's a little community of a place where people can take ownership, where they can belong, where they can heal, where they can begin to rebuild their lives.
It shows the power of community too, Susan, having people that have been through similar things, or maybe they've been through different things, but they can share what's going on. And then even for the kids, I interviewed a woman recently that has created a program for children of those who are incarcerated, and they build community amongst the kids. So the kids can share, like, if they're struggling, or just even support one another. And it's just the power of community. And that's really what you're creating.
Yes, it's really, really important for all of us to have community.
Yeah.
A place to belong, a place to share, a place that you don't feel ashamed of what's happening, what you've been through, or what you're going through.
Yeah. Well,
And
I
you're
mean,
supported.
yeah. And I was reading recently just about how there are currently 2.7 million children in the US who have a parent who are incarcerated. And statistics show that children of incarcerated parents are 7 times more likely to enter the criminal justice system. So I can only imagine the power, even more so, of what you're doing, where you're empowering these kids to change the cycle. And even for the mothers, for them to change the cycle for themselves, and then for these kids. And it's just the power of community. How do you get connected to the women that you work with, or how do they get connected with you?
Well, the women write to us from different places and different jails, prisons, both state and federal, and they ask for support. So it's sort of an informal referral system. We're pretty well known across definitely across California. And when my book was published, we began to send those books into prisons all over the country, actually all over the world. And we began to receive letters from those places, from women asking for help.
Yeah, I saw you did a book tour, I think, where you went to different jails and prisons, which I'm sure was just really transformative. What made you want to write your story into a book? What made you want to write the book?
So, Kate, when we talk about incarceration, we often leave women out of that conversation. When we are building services for people who've been incarcerated, we often just build those services for men. All of the focus is put on men, while women are the fastest growing segment of the criminal justice system. And so I wanted to put women into the conversation And I wanted to give an example of who the women are that we incarcerate. And I wanted to also show that, we have something to give to the world, to the community, if given an opportunity. And lack of opportunity um, really shortchanges our society on all the gifts that people have to give into the world if they're shut away and blocked because of collateral consequences. So I wanted to tell a story of women, and get us further into the conversation around mass incarceration and resources for support. So through the book, Becoming Miss Burton, I demonstrate, a lot of what has happened, what can happen, what is happening. And it's about women and our children.
I will be sure to link your book because I want everybody who's listening to read it and, of course, support the work that you're doing and continue to follow you. But it's just so inspiring, everything that you're doing. And one thing that really kind of touched me as you were speaking there, and I haven't shared this much publicly, but when I went into Cook County to film The Girl Inside, I had a couple people had said to me before I went in, oh, like, why do you use the word girl? Like, why do you use the word girl? One girl revolution, like you should just do it more generalized. And I just felt like there was some reason why girl needed to be the thing that was used, the word that was used. And Susan, when I was sitting in that room with these women, the one word that they latched onto was the word girl, because
Mhm.
they said, when I was a little girl, no one told me that I mattered. When I was a little girl, no one told me that I could do anything that I wanted. They had hopes and dreams. They wanted to become teachers. They wanted to become performers and singers. And I think that's such an important thing when we talk about women and we talk about even children, just really everybody in the world, is to remember what we were created for. And at its most simplest, freshest, maybe innocent moment is when we're kids. And then very quickly, even what you experienced in your life, very quickly we get pulled into traumas and difficult things that we have to go through even as children. But it's so important to remember what we were created for. And these women just shared that through this class and this storytelling and learning how to tell their own story, they remembered the little
Yeah.
girl. They remembered who they were.
Yeah, I saw your documentary, The Girl Inside, and it was absolutely exciting and beautiful and real. I really connected with it, and it was quite authentic. I loved it. So
Thanks, Susan.
we want to show that film at our film festival.
We would
So
love to do that. We would love to do that. That'd be
yeah,
amazing. And you're
yeah,
just such a gift. But yeah, I'm gonna link your book and everything. But I want to ask you. So this podcast is all about stories, and I'd love to hear maybe a couple of stories of women that you've worked with through a new way of life. Maybe stories that embody the work that you do, or stories that just kind of touched your heart in a special way.
yeah. There have been so many women that have been through a new way of life, and I remember a woman named Teresa that I picked up from California Institute for Women. This has been some years back, and she had a young son named Nathan. Nathan was about 5 years old then. He's 18 now, so it's been a while. But will always remember Nathan, because maybe because he was about the age of my son when he was taken, and it was Christmas, and we go out and make a really, really good Christmas for our residents. And Nathan, his mother, picked him out a Buzz Lightyear, and when he opened his present on Christmas morning, he jumped from the floor all the way around his mother's neck when he seen Buzz Lightyear. And I didn't know what Buzz Lightyear was, but he just started hollering and screaming. And he told her that she was the best mommy in the world for that Buzz Lightyear. And that's one of the memories that I hold on to. And Teresa went on to work for a social justice library and really got a good, great understanding of our society and how it works or doesn't work. That's one story. And then one of the women that work with us now, actually two of the women, I watched them really fight the system to get back ownership of their children. One of the things that, you brought up the statistic of 2.7 million children, I believe. Was it 2.7 million?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, children has a parent that is incarcerated. And, there is this sort of like industry of shuffling the kids within of incarcerated parents through these different systems, and these parents have to fight hella hard to get their children back. It still again reminds me of ownership of people through what they call a Department of Children and Family Services or Child Protective Services, but these agencies that hold the children and makes the mother go through all of these different qualifying services that says, okay, you've done all of this, which is a full-time job. So I watched these parents and supported these parents to really fight to get their children back. And I guess it's kind of sort of attached to my own loss of my child. They're able to get their children back. And I want to help them to get their children back. But it's a big problem in this nation. The way in which we strip people of their rights to their children as a result of their incarceration. It doesn't mean that they're a bad parent because they were incarcerated. And there just needs to be there needs to be better supports and systems to make strong families, to make healthy families, including those that were incarcerated. So those are some of the beautiful victories that I get to be a part of as women navigate through a new way of life and back into the community.
Yeah. Susan, you must feel like such a proud mama too when you see all these women and their kids, getting out into the world and doing amazing things. And I know that you stay in contact with many of them. Do some of the women end up staying connected to a new way of life and volunteering to help others?
Yeah, they do. And then we have some women who have been through our homes that actually work here. Some women who have went out. I'm thinking of one woman in particular, Yolanda. She opened a salon, so she's a salon owner, and she always comes to get the women and do their hair and help them to prepare to go to work and prepare for special events. Yeah, people do stay in touch.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that's just a shout out too to everybody who's listening, whatever your gift and talent is. I know the power of a haircut or a hairstyle or manicurist. I know different friends of mine have donated their time to organizations like yours to go in and be like, okay, even for the little girls, you think about like the little kids that are there,
Yeah.
the power that a haircut has. And so whatever people are listening, whatever their gift and talent is, volunteer your time and talent to support organizations like yours.
Yeah.
Susan,
we all have something to give away.
We do. It's true.
Special. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a big thing, right? Like you don't have to start an organization. Sometimes it's the little things that we can just do in our daily life.
Yes.
If you would like to hear more stories straight from women who have been incarcerated, check out One Girl Revolution's The Girl Inside on YouTube. One Girl Revolution took a film crew behind the walls of the largest single-site jail, Cook County Jail, and interviewed 5 incarcerated women. This short documentary highlights a life-changing academic class and the life and experiences of these 5 women, and what is revealed is the girl inside. You can watch The Girl Inside today on our website at onegirlrevolution.com. And now back to this episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Susan, what's the most difficult? I want to know two things. What is the most difficult thing about your day-to-day life working with a new way of life? And I have some ideas of what that would be, but I want to hear from you. And then what is the most beautiful thing, or what is the best part of what you do on a day-to-day basis?
I think they're both related. So one of the most painful things for me to see is someone that clearly from my eyes has all of these gifts and talents and is really, really where everybody's important. But at moments, some gifts and talents seem really, really important to our community and to our world, and to see and understand the harm that this person has endured, and them not able to navigate through the harm to begin to heal, to actually spend those gifts and talents in the world and be in a so feeling so undeserving or unable to actually really get to attach and realize how important they are and their lives are, and unable to separate themselves from a sort of destructive path and destructive thinking. That hurts a lot to see. And then on the other hand, to watch someone peel all that hurt and harm away and begin to heal, and to see the light off in their eye and see the light come back on in their eye, and they get this vibrant zest for life. That's just beautiful to watch happen in real time, from doubting to yourself to believing in yourself.
It's such a beautiful transformation. And I love the stories of women because I feel like we don't have to die to have many lives, as they say, and you can see it's almost like we're cats, where we can have 9 lives, and you aren't defined by one chapter of your life. That's simply one chapter, and that we have the power to rise above anything, and we're so resilient. And I just think that you're seeing that every single day.
Yes. Yeah.
Susan, if you could get to the very root, I know that your son, KK, is such a driving force for you on a day-to-day basis. I know that your own experience, things that you've gone through, is a driving force. But if you could get to the very root of what drives you, the fire behind what's driving you every single day, what would that be?
I think the thing that drives me is the injustice that I witness and see, and wanting to eradicate it. And it probably won't happen in my lifetime, but I know that I have freed a lot of souls and a lot of minds. So I did my share. But I think it's the total injustice of this world, of this nation. I just got back last week. I went to Alabama to visit the Equal Justice Initiative, and spoke and talked with Brian Stevenson. And he actually has a museum and a memorial there that has traced the history of slavery. He has a shirt that says from slavery to mass incarceration. And understanding how it's rooted, where it's rooted, and understanding that we need to dismantle it, and is what keeps me going as a part of that dismantling and freeing people from the tactics and history of this country.
For people that are listening, make sure that you see Just Mercy is a very powerful film, and read Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson and follow his work because he's such an inspiration. And that's awesome that you were both together last week. So Susan, this podcast, I love dreaming on this podcast. In your dream of dream worlds, where does a new way of life go 5 or 10 years down the line? In your dream of dream worlds, money isn't an issue. What do you hope that you can accomplish in 5 to 10 years? Or where do you hope that a new way of life goes from here?
So a new way of life is a unique reentry model that's driven by people that are directly affected, and has a philosophy of autonomy and support to dream, safety and security, and building community. So I'd like to see a new way of life model replicated all across this nation. I would like to see investment in the model, like people have invested in prisons and jails. So we have begun to train people to replicate our model. And right now we're in 13 states, but we have a lot of states to go. So we want to transform how we are supporting people to come back into the community after incarceration, causing less people to go into incarceration, but create a different model, a different take, a different walk for our, especially for women who are so vulnerable and experience so much harm. So I want to see the model all across the nation.
I hope that that's what we see. And I feel like that's what we're going to see, because you've grown and evolved so much. And the more that people hear about your work and learn about you and your story and all the stories connected to it, how could people not want this for our world? It's just so transformative. And I'm so excited to share your story on this podcast. Susan, what do you hope that the world can learn from your work and your story? What impact do you hope that your story and your work can have on the world and people that are listening?
That they really dig in and rethink what we're doing in this nation around mass incarceration, and that people are no longer willing to allow our nation to be a nation of punishment, a nation of torture and harm, and that we all have open and forgiven hearts, and think about what I would want for myself, and that we're all connected. And when I give it to the next person, I'm giving it to me too.
Susan, what can people do to support your work? I know that there are so many people that are listening that they want to donate, they want to get involved. What are all the ways that people can support your work?
Yeah, so they can go to anewwayoflife.org, and they can volunteer, they can donate. Every woman that comes out, we want to be able to supply her with a gift card that she can go to the store and get some of the personal items that she needs. There are all types of ways that people can support. I think that we can all look inside and pull up some compassion, and some forgiveness for people, ourselves, and for others.
I will be sure to post all the links to your website so people can get involved, and I'll encourage people to follow you on social media. If they want to read your book, I'll link to your book. If they want to have you come speak, I think education, if I've learned anything from this podcast episode and everything that I've done, people need to educate themselves and educate their friends and family and coworkers. So if people want to have you come speak, I know that you'd be happy to do that. I will post the link to your documentary because it's so powerful, and I want to encourage everybody who's listening to watch that. For people who are listening, no matter where they are in the world, what can they do in their own communities to emulate the work that you're doing, which is really just, I mean, I think that at the very basic level, one thing that people can do is educate themselves. But what can people do in their own communities to emulate your work?
There are places that people are coming home all over the nation, and maybe they can get involved in one of those places and support the folks that are coming home locally. Maybe they can get involved in learning and reading more, from Becoming Miss Burton to Just Mercy to books that have been written on the subject. And yeah, there are all types of things that can happen, but each one of us knows each day when we're given an opportunity to do something different, to look at something different, then that's our opportunity, our individual opportunity.
Yeah, to open our eyes. Susan, you have opened my eyes. I know everybody who's listening, they're just so inspired by you. I'm so inspired by you and your work, and I look forward to staying in touch with you and finding ways that we can collaborate. I'd love to bring the Girl Inside out to your film festival and find ways that we can all work together, because you're just doing such incredible work. But before I let you go, I always end this podcast on one question. So I'd like to ask you, if you could leave women and girls around the world with one message, what would it be?
I would say, fight for the right to be the best that you can be.
Powerful. I want to have that just on my wall.
Yeah.
I feel like I want to write that out on my wall or get it tattooed on my arm. It's true. Well,
Yeah.
Susan, I'm just so grateful for all the great work that you do. And thank you so much for being on the podcast and for sharing your incredible story and all about your incredible work.
My pleasure.
Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. That's the number one girl REVO. And you can find more information on One Girl Revolution at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number one girlrevolution.com.